Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video, I've got your first overview and test drive. Gameplay will hopefully be coming in the next few days of the AMD.35 SA35. If you guys don't know, this is the lowest level reward in the current Repair Factory crafting event, and it is a premium rank 1 battle rating 1.7 vehicle, meaning that you can research through rank 2 with premium bonuses, which is nice, but it doesn't really matter all too much because rank 2 is pretty easy to grind through even without premiums. But either way, this is still a pretty nice addition. This is pretty much a modification on the AMD.35 already in game, and the main thing that's different, the main two things that are different, are the turret size and shape as well as the cannon. So the cannon's probably going to be the biggest difference, thus the name. So the SA35 cannon it is a 47mm cannon, whereas the standard AMD.35, which is a reserve vehicle, has a 25mm cannon. Now, ballistically speaking, this actually has lower armor pen values than the standard AMD.35. Now, of course, this is almost 2 times the size as a 25mm cannon, so we are seeing a substantially larger shell. So in theory, it should do much more post-pen damage, but we will have to wait and see. Now, its engine power, once it is fully upgraded, now, of course, you see that these are not checked, thus it's not contributing to the stat card here, but it will have 105 horsepower, all said and done, which is the same as the standard one of the tech tree, the AMD.35, and currently, it has the same exact mass, same turret armor, pretty much same everything except for the cannon. Now, it does have 4 crew members. Interestingly enough, this guy is protected by a little bit of armor in the back, which is very interesting. Same with fuel tanks, or at least the inside is. So pretty cool in my opinion. Now, that said, let's go test drive this vehicle. I just want to show you guys the SA35 here. Like I said, 25mm cannon, or the AMD.35. And also, it does, again, have slightly better armor pen, but albeit with a smaller shell. So let's go test out the SA35 right now, see how it functions. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked. Let's get into it. Oh, and if you guys just want to do this yourself, you can go up to here in the shop, click on workshop, and voila, you have all these vehicles. All you have to do is just go down to the bottom right, click preview, and boom, you can look at the vehicles at your leisure and also test drive them at your leisure. So you can do this for yourself. But that said, let's get into the AMD.35 SA35 test drive for, well, how I look at it. So getting into the test drive for this vehicle, there are a few things that just off the bat kind of concern me with the stat card. One, it's the fact that it doesn't have any additional weight. You would think it does. I think even in the devlog, it mentioned that it had additional weight. So I'm surprised that this doesn't weigh like 0.1 or 0.2 tons more, because it does have ultimately a larger turret. It does supposedly have a about the same armor, or exactly the same armor per the stat card as the standard AMD.35, but it does have a larger turret and also a different gun. So I'm kind of surprised by that. But on initial pen test here, it's going through pretty decently. Of course, that is a Panzer II, but you will be seeing Panzer IIs when using this a lot of the time. But it still has no problem going through the heftier Panzer IV, which is a good sign, of course, but it's not really doing a ton. One of the problems with French vehicles is that they have all pretty much solid shot. It's pretty much a common theme through about 7.0 plus BR. Which is unfortunate, unless they're using some sort of foreign vehicle, cannon, or shell. They pretty much exclusively use solid shot. Now, with this vehicle, as opposed to the standard AMD.35, I'm not going to shoot through that, I'm not even expecting it. But compared to the AMD.35, this does have about the same reload rate, which is interesting, but it does have around a 40 to 50% lower muzzle velocity for its shells, which probably would account for the that would probably be the reason why we're seeing a lower amount of armor pen with the larger shells. But again, once you actually pen with the larger shells, you are going to be doing substantially more damage, and around 1.7 BR I really don't see getting through most tanks, with 62mm of armor pen being too much of a problem, unless of course you're in a total up tier, which is kind of my next problem here with this vehicle. I kind of think that the larger shell does not mean that this thing is actually worth being at 1.7 BR. It doesn't really give it as much of an advantage as you might think, especially if they change the weight on this thing, which I'm not sure if they will. But assuming, again, I mean, Gaijin does this sometimes where they just add a vehicle and it's pretty much the same and then they later change the weight or some crazy thing. you know, days or weeks after it's initially released, kind of like with the AMC or the AMX 50 TOA 90, I think it was. I think they changed the weight on that, or the TOA 100, because it just didn't make much sense. So they might end up doing this, but it won't be all too much of a difference in that regard. But more likely than not, if they do change the weight, it's going to end up weighing more. So that being said, I could see this going down to 1.3 BR in the future. Now, of course, it doesn't really matter all too much. This doesn't have an LMG, which is kind of a problem, especially with so many open top and unarmored vehicles at this BR. LMGs would be useful. It does have a pretty decent HE shell, thankfully. It has around 143 grams of explosive filler, which is nice. So, you know, if you do encounter a vehicle like that SPAA, you should be able to destroy it pretty easily. But when it comes to actually armored vehicles, of course, HE is not going to do much except piss them off. So even a Panzer II can easily just tank right through this vehicle. So I'm just going to fire, I just want to show you guys here, firing AP through this. I mean, that's just ammunition, doesn't do anything. I can kill one guy, doesn't do anything. I mean, heck, I freaking shot right through this guy's leg, and it didn't kill him. So, ultimately, is this going to be a good vehicle? I mean, it doesn't really matter. Like, what are the actual repercussions of this being good or bad? Doesn't really matter, right? I mean, like, this is essentially a modification on a reserve tank. It's a cool vehicle to see in WarThunder because, you know, it's a modification on a tank that already exists. But as you could say, I mean, it's good. 1.7 BR good? I'm not entirely sure. But ultimately, does it really matter? I don't think so. It's a cool enough vehicle. I think it's a nice thing that they have in WarThunder. And I could see this going for a few dollars in the future on the marketplace. Well, actually, is it going to be a marketplace vehicle? I'm not entirely sure. But regardless, it's a cool enough vehicle. I can't complain about it. But 1.7 BR seems a touch high for it, maybe. At least when looking at the reserve AMD 35, which is about as good as this anyways. But it's, of course, reserve and not 1.7 BR. Either way, thanks so much for watching. Of course, if you guys want, please comment, like, subscribe, whatever you guys want to do. And also check out my QN506 video as well as the A7K video, because I do have test drives on those as well. Either way, though, thanks again, and I will see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.